One of the things I did want to focus on is lab tests that we can do. So a lot of women will say, well, I have low estrogen or I have low progesterone. Those are two of the main hormones that are being secreted or produced by the ovaries to maintain our cycles. What we can actually do is, instead of testing it through blood, which your medical doctor will do, when we test hormones through blood, what happens is they're attached to blood cells and they're inactive. They're not working in the body, they're not doing what we want them to do. The best way to test for hormones is always salivary hormone testing. And that's just using saliva. You do it at home and you send it away from home. It's completely non-invasive. The reason why we do saliva is because we want to test how active those hormones are. If we're testing the inactive hormones, it's not really giving us a clear picture as to what's actually going on. The salivary hormone panel does. And further to that, we can actually just do the adrenal glands as well, remembering that this is the backbone to all of our hormones. And what we do is we'll measure you at 4 different times throughout the night, because cortisol should be the highest in the morning, and then it slowly dips around noon, slowly dips around 3 p.m., and then it's usually done for the day. And we need to make sure that that nice curve is present. If we find that it's the opposite, then our adrenal glands are completely backwards, and if we find it's flatlined, then you're not going to get the energy that you want, you're not going to be feeling as good as you want, you're going to be more likely to develop illness and disease because you don't have that immune system. So we really need to make sure that those are kept on track. And I actually have handouts for both of those tests if you'd like to learn a bit more about those. But from a naturopathic perspective and how we can get started today, this is just talking about transition-happy foods, so really focusing on nutrition. And the rest of the panel is certainly going to touch on this, but always remember that every mouthful counts. So first and foremost, if you can eat organic foods, do it. And the rule of thumb for organic is if you eat the skin, it must be organic, simply because the skin of food is where the herbicides and pesticides have been sprayed. So that includes beans and berries, lettuce, spinach, those sort of things, unless you can really be sure that you're cleaning them off quite well. Healthy cooking techniques, so remembering that when we're going through menopause and we're having a lot of these heat symptoms, a hot flash, a night sweat, those are all heat or too much heat produced in the body. We want to keep our cooking techniques to a minimum, so lightly boiling, lightly steaming. We don't need to do the heavy baking, the deep fried, or the braising of foods because you're adding way too much heat into that meat or into the vegetables, and then you're putting that heat inside you. It can actually make your hot flash symptoms worse. Mind your protein intake, and I know that Chris is certainly going to back me up on this one because women innately don't eat enough protein. We're too afraid that if we eat protein, we're going to get really big, and it's really not the case. Most people need about 60 grams of protein just to survive, and then if you're working out, you can take a little bit more above and beyond that. But protein is really the backbone to every single process in our body. If we want a good immune system, if we want to be able to repair, if we want to have energy, if we want to feel great, we need to have protein in order to do that. Fish, 2 to 3 times a week. Antioxidants, so lots of berries, remembering that we eat the skin of berries, so trying to get it organic if you can, and lots of vitamin C-rich fruits, so strawberries, oranges, citrus fruits, that sort of thing. And those just help to sort of give you the protection that you need. And when we don't have those antioxidants and those wonderful foods to protect us, every day we're going through a little bit of damage, and too much damage can age us prematurely, and we want to be beautiful right up until the day that we die, right? So those sort of foods will help. Low glycemic foods, always a must. And what that means is just low sugar foods. So if our blood sugar becomes irregular, then everything else falls apart. That entire triad between those organ systems, it won't even matter because the blood sugar will just take over. And we really need to manage that, and protein will help. And then almonds and walnuts as a good snack, and generally people that eat these as a snack will be less likely to reach for the processed foods and the prepackaged snack foods. And it also provides you with some healthy fats and healthy protein. But from a supplement perspective, the biggest things that I always put my patients on is phytoestrogens and black cohosh. And both of these have been the most researched as to really improving hot flashes and menopausal symptoms. So phytoestrogens is where the soy and isoflavones come in. And I know that there's a lot of controversy with those, but I will tell you, if it's an organic, not genetically modified soy, it's really good for you. And it is actually quite protective against a lot of the estrogen-positive cancers. But but it's when it's genetically modified or not organic and not grown in an appropriate way that it can actually cause more harm than good. So unfortunately, labeling-wise, they don't have to label if it's been genetically modified, but if it isn't, and if it's organic, it will be on the label. And getting it from a reputable company, and I really emphasize that, companies that have really done their research and are using good quality products, they'll take care of that for you, so you don't need to worry about it from your food. And then black cohosh is another herb that really helps to stabilize all the hormones, and generally it can take anywhere from 1 week to 8 weeks to get going on the treatment. With my patients, I'm not afraid to start you off with a little bit more and slowly taper you down just so you get that result a little bit faster. It all depends on the person though. Now, the vitamin E and the vitamin C. The vitamin E is specifically for women that are suffering from painful intercourse or that are having vaginal dryness, which is a very common side effect of menopause. And you can actually take a vitamin E capsule and just use it to lubricate the vaginal area or take it internally to help with the skin, and it's also a good antioxidant. And then exercise. So exercise 3.5 hours per week has been shown to really improve menopausal symptoms in most women. And it's because what we're doing is we're shrinking the fat, and Chris will certainly elaborate that a little bit more. This is my favorite one, so alkalinize or die. And this is where we're talking about the acid-base balance, if you're familiar with those terms. The more dark leafy green vegetables we have, the more greens powders we use, the healthier our bodies are from an alkaline perspective. So using great alkalinizing water like what we have, the Kangen water, really helps your body flush out those toxins, get your body working a lot better, because if we're constantly in, if you can imagine, a huge vat of acid, you're not really going to be functioning all that well. But if you're swimming in a beautiful pool filled with neutral water, you can swim in that all day and you'll have a wonderful time. So that's where we really need to shift, and with a lot of my patients, that's the first thing I test, regardless of what they're coming in for. So if our bodies aren't functioning from a basic level, you're never going to get to where we want them to go. And then of course the lifestyle changes, so this is where Veronica takes over.